What's up, backyarders? Coming up, we're going to talk about reverse searing. What is it? Why do we do it? And when do we do it? Stay tuned. So we're going to talk about reverse searing. I know a lot of you guys have heard of reverse searing and many of you cook with it. It's a great method if you do it with the right piece of meat at the right time. Reverse searing is a way of cooking a thicker piece of meat more accurately. Generally, when we're cooking steaks, tri-tip, picanha, we go with a slam it on the grill, 2 minutes each side, and we're done. The problem with that method is that it just doesn't always turn out the way we're expecting it to. It may be a little more on the rare side, it may be a little too done. And don't get me wrong, it's a great method. But when your steaks get thicker, that gets much harder to accomplish, is to get that perfect finish inside. And that's what we're all looking for, is we're looking for that perfect finish, the finish that suits you. You know, when you go to a restaurant and they ask you how you want your steak, what is the perfect answer for you? And it's gonna be different for everybody. For me, I'm a medium rare guy. So I like to see my steaks, you know, pink in the middle, but not raw, not quite raw, but close. To me, that's just the most tender, most flavorful steak, but everybody's different. This reverse sear method is really, really great for doing thicker cuts of meat because, like I said, there's so much more meat there, it's hard to time it exactly right if you're just throwing it on and searing it. When you reverse sear, you finely tune the results that you're gonna get, and it's not that much harder. You're just leaving it in a warmer oven, grill, or wherever for a little bit longer to let the temperature of the steak come up. The method produces a more juicy and more flavorful steak. Generally, you're gonna be using a thicker piece of meat. In today's case, the example I'm gonna show you, we're using picanha, and we're gonna slice it up into thick steaks. I'm using Kingsford's Original, and it's great for this. It's the briquettes, because the briquettes are perfect for a reverse sear. Your lump is more suited for just the sear. It burns hot and a little faster. The briquettes are gonna give us a little more time and a little more control over the heat. I'm only using about 20 or 25 briquettes. It doesn't take a whole lot to do the reverse sear. We're only gonna have it on the grill for 45 minutes or so. I do have water in the divider in the slow and sear. I'm using the slow and sear to modify this Weber into a steak machine, but this really helps separate our searing zone from our indirect zone. If you can kind of judge this by my finger here as far as size, this kind of size is gonna allow us to cut some thick steaks, which are gonna be perfect for the reverse sear. All right, so this is silver skin. We need to go ahead and cut this off. This isn't gonna help our cook at all. There you go. You take a wet paper towel, put it under your cutting board, cutting tray or whatever, and it'll help keep it from spinning on you. All right, let's get the rest of this silver skin here off. So this whole picanha came in at about 3.5 pounds. Any of the edges where you see, fat kind of, where, there's more fat than there is meat, you may want to trim that up. That side, I think that might be a good candidate for it right here.
Ultimately, all I'm trying to do is make sure that this picanha cooks as evenly as possible. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and cut the steaks. And we're going to cut with the grain in order to shape the steaks. That way, when you're eating them later, you'll cut across the. And what slicing across the grain does is it ensures that your bite is going to be as tender as possible. Now I'm looking for some nice thick steaks since we're going to do this with a reverse sear. I'm looking at about 1 inch to 1.25 inches. You'll probably have a smaller piece on each end. Keep that. You can still throw that on the grill and it'll be done much earlier than the rest. And that's a chef's treat. This one's borderline, but go ahead and take a look at your fat cap. If you want to slice some of that off, now's the time to do it. I'm going to season with kosher salt, but I'm not going to use much because I'm going to use Cosmos Q's Texas beef. And this has salt in it also. Now this is just going to highlight the beefy, wonderful flavor in picanha. Cosmos puts out some pretty good stuff. Check him out if you haven't already. And I'm definitely going to finish it with a little coarse black pepper. Now after leaving the steaks out for about an hour and letting the internal temperature come up to about room temperature, and that'll depend on how big the steaks are, then it's time to put them on the grill. So the first step when doing reverse searing is to make sure that you have a nice lower temperature and it's steady and consistent. I'm looking for about 250 degrees to start out with here. So I'm going to adjust my bottom vent and my top vent to just barely open. And I'm going to monitor that 250. Once I'm at 250 and I'm steady, I can go ahead and put my steaks on. I'm going to put them on fat cap down. And that's to help protect them from the heat. I'm not looking for any sear at this point. I'm just gently trying to bring the internal temperature up to about 115 degrees. Now, since these steaks are different sizes, I'm going to move them onto the sear station according to each steak's temperature. When each steak reaches 115, then I'm going to move it onto the sear station. 115 is the number I picked because I'm going for a medium rare final temperature, which is about 130 to 135. So I need to have some room between when I pull it off of the indirect side and put it onto the sear station as far as temperature goes. That way I don't overcook them. And you would basically just adjust this to whatever temperature it is you're looking for your steak to be finished at.
And you know it's hot enough when you hear that nice sear, that nice sizzle.
In order to get the heat up to searing temperatures, which is about 400, 450 degrees or so, you're just going to leave the lid off if you're using a grill like I am, and that's going to allow it to come up to temp.
I'm going to do about 2.5, 3 minutes per side, and that should put me right about 135. All right, checking temps again. I already flipped them. Oh yeah, we're good there. 138. If it's 138, 128, I'm gonna take that one up just a little bit more. All right, so when they get to that 115, that's when you wanna go ahead and get them on the sear, and that's where we are. Now, if you get a little bit of a flare up, just make sure you're rotating them. If it gets too hot, you can put the lid back on, which I think I'm gonna do. I don't wanna burn them. That'll kind of dial that fire down, so we're just going with heat rather than flame. 118, 123, 127. We're still 130 on that little guy. Remember, we're cooking to temperature here, so it's not as important to only have these steaks on here for a certain amount of time. We're gonna go to 135 and we're gonna pull them off. All I can say is wow, this picanha looks amazing. It's the perfect temperature. It's got a perfect sear. This is a beautiful, beautiful steak. It's probably top 3 steaks I've ever had that's out of this world. No reverse sear goes against a lot of the fundamentals when it comes to cooking steak. But I'm telling you, on the thicker cuts, if you use the reverse sear like I just showed you, you're gonna love those steaks even more. Reverse sear is an amazing cooking method, guys. Make sure you give it a shot.